This is Eddie Hearn, Matchroom Boxing. You are watching Sporting Icons. You don't need to be anywhere else.
Okay, so let's address it. Carl Froch is back at it again. He said this about Anthony Joshua. AJ has had a fantastic career financially, but maybe it niggles him that he's probably got no real legacy. He's not in the Hall of Fame, unlike the Cobra. He's not going to go down as an all-time great with the fights he's had, losing to Ruiz and back-to-back fights with Usyk. What's he fighting for? He said money, but money is not motivation when you're fighting. Trust me. Carl Froch's statement. Now, we're going to talk a little bit about Carl Froch, then we're going to talk a bit about Anthony Joshua, and of course I'm going to give you my overall assessment. So, Carl Froch is in the Hall of Fame. Okay, so what is it exactly that Carl Froch bigs himself up about? What exactly? Now, don't get me wrong, he had a pretty good career, 33 wins and only 2 defeats. And one of those defeats he did avenge against Mikkel Kessler. But he was in a very, very weak division, Carl Froch. Carl Froch never moved up to light heavyweight. He was a career super middleweight. So never challenged himself by moving up. Okay? And with the wins that Carl Froch had, it took him 5 years until he actually fought somebody that we'd even heard of in Robin Reed. At that point, Robin Reed, he'd already lost 5 times when Carl Froch fought him. Right? So, Carl Froch, he didn't really do anything until he fought, Jean Pascal? Jean Pascal, who was 21-0 at the time. Well, Jean Pascal, what did he do until he fought Carl Froch? Well, Jean Pascal only really fought journeymen. So, it's not like Jean Pascal was this killer. Because he wasn't. He'd only fought pretty much journeymen and gatekeepers. That's what Jean Pascal done. Jermaine Taylor. Well, Jermaine Taylor had already lost twice before Carl Froch fought him. But Jermaine Taylor's claim to fame was defeated a Bernard Hopkins. Once he beat him, and of course the rematch with a draw. But Bernard Hopkins had already lost twice at that point. And what else did he do? He beat a Jeff Lacey? Okay, a Jeff Lacey that Joe Calzaghe had already beaten? He lost to Arthur Abraham. So, what's so special about Jermaine Taylor? Absolutely nothing. Are people going to look back in the annals of history and talk about Jermaine Taylor? Not really. Andre Durrell. Okay, Andre Durrell, he was 18-0. Carl Froch lost that fight, but he got gifted a decision. He did. He was very, very lucky to get that decision. He was. All right. Now, then, of course, he fought Mikkel Kessler and lost that one. Carl Froch got took to school in that fight. He takes on Arthur Abraham. And nobody cares about Arthur Abraham. Nobody cares about Arthur Abraham. Arthur Abraham, okay, maybe a lot of people will remember him for the latter part of his career. But when Carl Froch fought him, Andre Durrell beat him in the fight beforehand, and up to that point, all Arthur Abraham had done was beat journeyman. By the way, did Carl Froch ever win the European title? Quick question. No, he didn't, I think. But he took on Glenn Johnson as well. Glenn Johnson, who had 14 losses and 2 draws at that point. That Glenn Johnson, that's who Carl Froch beat. Okay. Then, of course, he gets humiliated by Andre Ward. No shame in that. Andre Ward beat everybody, right? But Carl Froch got embarrassed in that fight. He was embarrassing in that fight. He really was. Now, I'm not going to say he didn't give it a go. He did give it a go, but he just weren't no match for Andre Ward. And again, at least Andre Ward actually moved up to light heavyweight and tested himself there as well. He defeats 30-0 Lucien Boutte. But who did Lucien Boutte beat before Carl Froch fought him? Who? A Glenn Johnson with 15 losses on his record? Oh, maybe Jean-Paul Mendy, who was 29-0. Well, who did Jean-Paul Mendy beat? Absolutely nobody. And prior to then, it was just European-level bums. That's all Lucien Boutte beat. That was it. So how is that a good win? Youssef Mack. I've never even heard of this guy. Never even heard of him till Carl Froch fought him. Then, of course, he does do well, and he defeats Mikkel Kessler in the rematch. He does. But Did he do it in Mikhail Kessler's own country? No, of course not. He had to get that rematch on his own turf, didn't he? He did. But ultimately, okay, him fighting, say, George Groves, okay, he done well in the rematch. He convincingly beat George Groves, but in the first fight, he needed the referee's help to stop the fight early. So what exactly has Carl Froch done? What's he done? He's in a weak era, never moved up, he never unified the division, he never became undisputed. In fact, Carl Froch, he won all belts. I don't believe he ever won the WBO off the top of my head. He won the WBC on his own, and he's won the IBF and the WBA together. So at one time, he's only ever held 2 belts. He never held the WBC with those other 2, did he? Unlike Anthony Joshua had the WBA, the WBO, the IBF, and the IBO. He was carrying around 4 belts. All of those belts, by the way, he won individually. Well, IBO excluded, of course, because he won that alongside the WBO when he defeated Klitschko. Anthony Joshua, who is a 2-time unified heavyweight world champion. Carl Froch, okay, he'd done 80,000 at Wembley Stadium. Great. But a lot of that was down to the selling of George Groves. George Groves sold that fight. He did. Carl Froch wasn't really a pay-per-view fighter in his career. He wasn't. Anthony Joshua was, because Anthony Joshua had that fan base. He was an Olympic gold champion. He won a world title very, very early in his career, the IBF against Charles Martin. And he unified against Vladimir Klitschko, knocked out Vladimir Klitschko, beat Carl Froch's record of 80,000 at Wembley by doing 90,000 at Wembley. Unified again when he fought undefeated Joseph Parker. Became the first person to knock out Alexander Povetkin. Povetkin had only lost once before then on a points loss to Vladimir Klitschko. Arguably, Klitschko should have been disqualified in that fight, but hey-ho, it is what it is. But Joshua knocked him out. Joshua also knocked out Kubrat Pulev. Again, Kubrat Pulev had only ever lost once, and that, again, was also to Vladimir Klitschko. Okay, so he come undone against Andy Ruiz Jr. It happens. It happens. One punch in the heavyweight division, in most divisions really, but especially the heavyweight division, can change everything. But he conclusively beat him in the rematch. And Carl Froch talks about how he lost back-to-back fights with Alexander Usyk. Okay. But at least he actually rematched him. You didn't rematch Andre Ward now, did you? Now, I know you tried, but you would only do it if it happened in England, in Nottingham. Wasn't that the story? But what happened with Anthony Joshua in that first fight with Usyk is what happened with Carl Froch against Andre Ward. But Andre Ward will go down as great. Will he? Will he? People will remember other super middleweights and in and around that weight era more than they will Carl Froch. People will remember Nigel Benn. People will remember Chris Eubank Jr. People will remember Joe Calzaghe. People will remember these people more than they will Carl Froch. Carl Froch is such an egotistical, jealous guy when it comes to Anthony Joshua. Why? Because he had the same coach as Carl Froch in Rob McCracken. And what? Are you mad because you were no longer the prized fighter for Rob McCracken? Rob McCracken's big achievement was Carl Froch. In fact, he done better because he got Anthony Joshua. Is that what it was? Is it because Carl Froch never got the paydays that Anthony Joshua got? Is it because Carl Froch was never really a pay-per-view fighter like Anthony Joshua was? Anthony Joshua is one of only 4 people in the history of the heavyweight division to have lost the world title and won it back in the immediate rematch at heavyweight. Only one of 4 in the history of the heavyweight division. That Anthony Joshua. Anthony Joshua, listen, he may well have lost to Alexander Usyk back-to-back. That same Alexander Usyk who many people proclaim in Tyson Fury to be the best of this era is frightened to death of fighting him. But at least Joshua fought him. When Anthony Joshua lost to Andy Ruiz Jr., guess what he done? He went straight back in there and corrected it. Did Carl Froch do that with Mikkel Kessler? Did he? No. He waited a few fights, didn't he? Did Carl Froch do that with Andre Ward? No, that rematch never even happened. Anthony Joshua has changed the game. Anthony Joshua has put British boxing on the map, something that Carl Froch never did. I'm not saying that Carl Froch was no good. I'm not saying that. And he didn't do well. He did. But again, in a very weak era. I'm not saying that this particular heavyweight era is strong in any kind of way. I'm not saying that. But Anthony Joshua has defeated a lot of undefeated fighters along the way. Dillian White, Charles Martin, Dominic Brazil. Dominic Brazil is one of Wilder's best wins. So when Carl Froch says that Anthony Joshua has no legacy, that he's not going to be a Hall of Famer, okay, so is Tyson Fury going to be? Has Tyson Fury got a better resume than Anthony Joshua? Has he? Has Deontay Wilder got a better resume than Anthony Joshua? You name me one heavyweight currently who has a better resume than Anthony Joshua for unifying belts and doing all the kind of things that he done. Has anybody done that? A lot of people talk about boxing and are into boxing and have packed out boxing gyms because of Anthony Joshua, not because of the Cobra. You need to wind your neck in, Froch. That's what you need to do, mate. Because you weren't all that yourself. What kind of legacy did you leave? You're a bitter, twisted ex-fighter. That's what you are. And you're jealous. Drop your thoughts below. Click thumbs up, subscribe. Catch you next video.